Hey, it's us again.
Hello.
How's it going? How have you been? How's
Well,
your mom and
I've
them?
been spectacular.
Nobody was talking to you. So,
Continue.
I think I'm hilarious. So we're here today to talk about the Final Fantasy franchise. Because with our Home on the RNG episodes, we can't really talk about the franchise as a whole in depth. It's just not the way the show's structured. And we will tackle some of these games, but we're not doing all of them. So here's our opportunity to talk about the franchise as a whole. Final Fantasy was the first Nintendo game I ever played.
Really?
I played it at a friend's house. I didn't even have a Nintendo at that point.
Wow.
And what's funny, what really stuck in the mind is, he gave me the controller and I was playing with the starting characters, and I got into the first combat, and I told all the characters to attack the first monster.
Oh, right.
And he told me,
Bad idea.
He told me, don't do that, because then if it's defeated, they're all just going to be swinging in air. And I said, that's stupid. That's not how it's going to work. What's going to work? What's going to happen is they'll attack it when it's dead. They'll automatically move to the next target. That's just how it'll work. That's not how the original Final Fantasy works. No. But that is how later and almost every other JRPG works. So my mind was in the right place, apparently, even as a kid.
So you didn't have a Nintendo for a while, if that's the first
No, I don't.
Nintendo game that you played.
I don't think I did. I didn't have a Nintendo for a while.
I didn't know that. 15 years, and I didn't know that.
We're learning about each other every day.
Fair enough.
When did you first meet Final Fantasy?
Well, no, I did. I played Final Fantasy 2 on the Super NES first, which is really Final Fantasy 4.
Yeah.
But it was titled and branded as Final Fantasy 2 on the Super NES, and I rented it over and over and over again.
I did too.
From my local video store until my mom was actually like, let's just go buy it, because we've already paid the cost of the game to this video store. So I played Final Fantasy 2 on the Super NES first. Then I went back and bought, with my allowance, the original Final Fantasy, which, when you're going backwards
that's a big step.
It was a terrible disappointment.
Because that's not even one step down, really, like it sounds. Yeah. It's 4 games back.
Right. Yeah. So it was a terrible disappointment. So I did not thoroughly play the original Final Fantasy until I was much older, because I was so mad that I spent my allowance on that game when I had played Final Fantasy 2. Yeah.
So there's no way you're watching this video and don't know this, but just in case. So Final Fantasy 1 came out in Japan and then here. It's called Final Fantasy because it was going to be the last game this company made before it went bankrupt, and oh my god, it became a huge success. The company was saved. And they just kept calling them Final Fantasy after that.
And they ripped off Dragon Quest.
Well, they
modeled it after Dragon Quest.
Yes. Well, you almost had to. There wasn't anything else to model it after. But they made enough differences that it was its own beast. And there's certainly a lot more going on in Final Fantasy 1 than there is in Dragon Quest 1.
Right.
A lot more.
Right. Well, I think...
they had an extra 2 years.
If I'm not mistaken, Dragon Quest 3 was out.
2 came out...
By the same...
2 came out a couple months before Final Fantasy 1.
Okay.
But Dragon Quest 1 had been out for 2-3 years when Final Fantasy 1 came out. So
I stole the idea. Go on.
And then Final Fantasy 2 and 3 did not come out in America until much, much later. Final Fantasy 4 came out for the Super Nintendo.
Did you know they totally localized Final Fantasy 2?
I did not know that.
They did. I think they completed it, much like Mother 1.
Yeah, I know you could find a ROM, so I guess that's where that came from.
And they completed it, and I think they decided the story was too adult. Because the Final Fantasy 2 story is kind of dramatic. A lot of people die.
So Final Fantasy 2 originally was actually Final Fantasy 4. Then they skipped Final Fantasy 5 in America too, which is a shame.
Kids, this is what we had to deal with in the 90s.
So what we bought when it came out for the Super Nintendo was Final Fantasy 3, was actually Final Fantasy 6. Now, then 7 came out and they just said, screw it, call it 7. And since then, we've kind of corrected the numbering. Most people know 4 is 4. But every now and again, I will encounter somebody who grew up who played 2 on the Super Nintendo, which is 4.
Some people like to call that one 2. just because.
Yeah. So anyway, brief overview of the series. Final Fantasy 1 did its job. I mean, now it's a pretty rough game,
Yeah.
but being able to choose your classes.
But now you can play it on your iPhone or your whatever, and you can play it everywhere. There's so many different versions.
I know, but creating your own party class or your own party based on the classes, that was kind of neat.
So did Dragon Quest 3 steal that from Final Fantasy?
I never played Dragon Quest 3. I can't help it.
Oh, because it has just pick your class and make your own party. You never played Dragon Quest 3?
I haven't played 2 or 3.
Okay.
Or 8 and 9. I've played the tiniest bit of 8, and I've played hours and hours of 7, which means a tiny bit of 7. I've played like 20 hours of 7, which means I did the prologue of 7.
We've derailed again. So Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 2 is. I hate that game. I hate that game so much.
Yeah, it's the only one I haven't finished of the numbered ones that aren't MMOs.
They tried something very different with 2. The main mechanic, they tried a couple of different things that worked in terms of your character learned vocabulary words, which he could then ask people to advance the story. That I actually kind of liked that for that time. It worked well.
That's weird.
I liked it because it gave the story more structure, and I'm a story-based person. But they had a mechanic where instead of leveling up when you acquire enough experience, your characters become better at whatever they do. So, if you make your character attack a lot, his attack goes up. If your character casts a lot of magic, their magic goes up. Here's the one, and it's kind of a good idea in concept.
It's intuitive, but
if
it didn't work.
You take damage, your HP goes up. The more times you get hit, the more HP you gain. So this game essentially requires you to beat the snot out of your own party. Every combat you go into, you want to whittle the monster down until they're almost dead. There's only one left. Then you beat up your own guys until they're almost dead so that they gain more health. This is a game that really wants you to beat yourself up, literally. Then they came out on the Game Boy Advance, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it for real this time. They added an extra little bonus dungeon. I'm going to do it for real this time. I'm going to beat this game. You have 3 main characters, and then your 4th character goes in and out of the party, rotating cast of 4th member as the story goes on. So I got a basic good idea of when a character was going to leave the party. And right before they leave, I just stripped them of all their equipment so I could give it to the new guy that came in. When I finally beat the game, the bonus dungeon began. And it was all the characters who had left my party with the equipment they had on them when they left.
Oh, interesting.
So I could not get past the very first part of that dungeon because the guy had no armor and no weapon. And as soon as he got into a fight, he died. There was nothing I could do.
Justice.
Final Fantasy II had gotten me again.
Wow, I didn't know you beat it. I never beat it.
I never beat 3.
I never cared that much. Well, I never beat 3 either, so there's 2 that I've never finished.
I've gotten pretty far in 3, but I never beat it. 3 had a job class. I like the Final Fantasy job system. I like it a lot. So I'm a big fan. I like that mechanic. But, I don't know, by the time 3 hit American Shores, I was almost done with my love of Final Fantasy by the time we got the real 3. Like, my love of Final Fantasy was on the way out.
Oh.
So I never really gave it the time or attention. I don't know. Did you spend time with 2 or 3? I guess I skipped over you talking about 2. Sorry.
I did play. Yeah, I think the PSP version of 2 is the one that I tried, and I just didn't care for it. And I played, and the same thing. I think 3. No. I don't think I've ever played 3. I really don't think I've ever played 3.
Well, sounds like you got something to do.
I feel like I've seen video of it being played.
We might have to do 3 as a home on the RNG just for us to play it.
Yeah.
Eventually. And then came 4. Oh, 4 is one of my favorite RPGs.
You need to be alone? What was that noise?
That was just me reveling in the memories. I don't know that I ever actually owned 4, but like Russ, I rented it a lot of times.
Yeah, I rented it. My mom probably paid for that game twice.
Here's what's wild too. So long after 4 had come out, the Super Nintendo was old hat at that point. I wanted to play it again, so I got an emulator, which was fairly new technology at the time. So new, in fact, that it couldn't do transparent layers. If you've played 4, one of the first things you do is you go through this mist cave where everything's kind of misty. But on the emulators, when they first came out, you couldn't see anything. It was a blind cave. So I went and rented. I found a Blockbuster that would still rent Final Fantasy IV for the Super Nintendo, rented it, brought it home, and I wrote down on a Post-it note the directions to get through the cave so I could then play it on an emulator whenever I wanted to.
Well, that sounds like a problem.
Well, it turns out you could pick that up, and there was actually a way by hitting, you could remove layers. So I could have just turned off the fog if I'd understood the controls better.
I gotcha.
But instead, I went through all that. But I love Final Fantasy IV. I spent so much time with that game as a kid. Like, it's one of the few games where I felt like I genuinely know the characters. They're like friends of mine.
I played it more than any other Final Fantasy, partially because it's been remade and ported to every system imaginable. I think more than any.
I think I own
Final
every
Fantasy.
version of it as well.
I've played it. I like it. I love it too. But I played it to the point of exhaustion.
I can play it in my head now.
Yeah,
pretty much. But I love the story. I love the characters, which is odd because I should not like the fact that your party is completely locked in. You never get any choice about your party or your classes or anything. It's completely story-based. At this part of the story, you have this. They changed that in later adaptations. They let you start swapping out party members, but for the most part, the only real change I ever make is I swap out Edge for Yang. That's all I do.
What about Edge? I feel sorry for Edge.
Yeah, he's the last person to join your party. He's not.
He's a ninja.
Oh, well, no, Fosoya joins last. Yeah. Fosoya, I feel bad for. He's really not in the party that long.
I didn't know that's how you pronounced that name.
How do you pronounce that name?
Fusoya.
Fusoya? Fosoya.
Just keep saying that repeatedly. It's so interesting.
They don't do Japanese very well.
No, I like the pronunciation.
Fosoya.
Fusoya.
Yeah.
Nice.
But, you know, it had some great moments. Tella casting his final spell.
Yeah.
Big dramatic moment. You spoony bard!
My favorite is Rydia's return.
Yes.
When
that was dramatic.
When she returns as an adult, she returns in the middle of a battle. The main villain is about to kill your whole party. He's about to kill everybody, and then all of a sudden...
Have you ever had that problem when you're playing through the game where she doesn't show up and everybody just dies?
No.
I've had that happen to me about half the time.
Really? I
don't know how, but somehow I bug the game out, and Golbez kills everybody, and Rydia doesn't show up, and I'm like, what?
That's the best. That is the best moment.
It is great. It's the cavalry.
She comes in. She's this little girl that joins you at the beginning of the game, just for a little while, and then you think she dies, and blah blah blah. And then and then she's back
as an adult with full powers.
She's an adult, and she's a summoner, and she summons a mist dragon that saves you, and that was an amazing moment.
4 is great.
Yeah. And
then 5, which we didn't get until much later, but I really like 5.
I like 5 too. It took the job system from 1 and 3 and expanded,
perfected
on
it
more.
Almost. Yeah, I mean, in fact, I think it's the best job system in the Final Fantasy main series. Tactics is better, but I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think it's the best use of the job system in Final Fantasy series. It's a very classic story. It's a very it's the last truly classic fantasy story in the Final Fantasy series.
9.
Oh yeah, 9 was a return to the roots. I always forget about 9.
People always forget about 9. 9 is my favorite. People always forget about 9. It's my favorite. Yeah.
And I thought I knew you.
What did you think my favorite was?
Not 9.
Because that's just descriptive.
9's the forgettable one. Nobody remembers.
I know nobody remembers 9. It makes me so angry.
It's weird.
It has the little black mage.
Vivi.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to get there. So 5, I like 5 a lot. In fact, I kind of want to play 5 again.
5's good.
My college roommate wanted to do a web series, or a web comic, based using job sprites from Final Fantasy V to put him into Final Fantasy VI. You know what? It would take twice this video to explain it.
Yeah, that sounds complicated, so go on.
I spent a lot of time with 5. And then 6 came out. 6 is great.
Yeah, six was six. Yes, I keep saying 6. 6 was revolutionary.
My friend Gary likes to describe it as you try to save the world and fail.
You did.
It didn't have job classes, but it had to this day, there are still people claiming there are secret characters and secrets in 6. And it did have secret characters. It was the first one with secret characters, Umaro and Gogo.
Right.
And oh my gosh, Gogo is crazy powerful if you know what you're doing with him.
Mm-hmm.
He has the ability,
Her.
him or her.
Her.
Gogo's identity is never revealed. In fact, Gogo shows up in 5. It's possible that Gogo in 6 is Gogo from 5.
Her.
Anyway, Gogo has the mimic ability, which on its own, yeah, you got to be really good to make use of it. But Gogo also has the ability, if you go into the status menu, which almost never gets used in in any fantasy game. They're usually there, but at most you check how many more fights till I level up. But if you go to the Gogo status menu, you can equip Gogo in the blank slots with anybody's skills, abilities, whatever. You give Gogo magic, Gogo can use the magic of everybody else in the party. Whatever spells they know, Gogo knows. Extremely versatile hidden character, but again, I must have played and beaten the game as a kid 2 or 3 times, and I never knew that. There's so much to that game that can still be discovered, I feel.
And it doesn't really have a main character.
No, it has a huge party.
It has a huge cast, and there's never one character that you use the whole game, that you only see the game from their perspective.
In fact, in the end, you have to use all of them.
Right. And I like it because if you have to choose main characters that hold up the story, it's the women. It's Terra and it's Celise.
Well, Locke.
And Locke, but I think of it as you start the beginning of the game as Terra.
Terra, and you start the second half of the game as
second
Celeste.
half, middle game as Celise, and you know, I like it that the women contribute so much to that story. Celise.
This is fun. We should keep
This
naming
is fun.
characters.
I had an argument with a friend from like middle school about how you pronounce Chocobo.
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 Moogle.
Moogle.
Muggle. Just to be difficult. All right, so we're at Final Fantasy VI. You know what? We're going to go ahead and stop the video here, and we'll do the rest of this series as a separate video, because I'm looking at the clock, and we've been going for a little
Are we
while.
going to talk about like Mystic Quest?
Well, sure, we got the time. Why not?
My personal favorite Final Fantasy.
Well, the greatest of fantasies.
The greatest.
All right, so we will continue our discussion of the Final Fantasy series, including the rest of the games, maybe Mystic Quest, and how we feel about the series now. So we'll see you next time.
All right, bye.